Welcome back to another Share Your Light episode. And as I've shared so many times, I really enjoy doing these episodes because it's a way to showcase people in our listening audience who are stepping more into their power, their light, their purpose. They're finding what really drives them to be connected and to build community. And today we're welcoming Heather from Dancing Bee Alchemy. And Heather is an earth intuitive, animal communicator, healing, and the creator of Dancing Bee Alchemy. She's trained in multiple shamanic lineages and studied herbalism and dreamwork. She also has a Reiki master degree in the Usui lineage and a certification in sacred soul alignment energy healing. She began her professional life as a physicist in the area of high energy theoretical physics and went on to practice law for a number of years. Reconnecting with the earth after years of sitting in an office transformed her life and her understanding of our amazing planet. She loves learning from the plants and animals we share the earth with and sharing that wisdom with others. She believes that connecting with earth wisdom is now more important than ever. So welcome, Heather, and thank you so much for coming on with me today.
Thank you, Denise. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and it's really fun to be talking to you today.
Well, thank you. And I just am really in awe of the path that you've led, that you went from being a physicist to a lawyer to running this beautiful whole new chapter of your life to connect with earth energy and share that with people. So could you share a little bit about your journey?
It's definitely been a winding road. I always did have a deep connection to nature. Animals were always central to my life, and my connection to animals have been a guiding force all of my life. But I did go on a more traditional path. I spent some time before I became a lawyer. I spent some time, or before I became a physicist, I spent some time in my late teens and early 20s traveling around the country, just living in a VW bus and traveling. One of the people that I traveled with was an amazing ethnobotanist. His name is Frank Cook, and sadly, he's no longer with us. But his connection to the plant world was just astounding. Wherever we went, he could hop out of the bus and look at something and say, "Oh, hi, friend," and just tell me all about the plants that were around us and all about their wisdom. So that sort of planted a seed, if you will, about my earth connection. But then, as I said, I did go on to more traditional careers and studying the universe through physics and studying and practicing law for a long time. I eventually came to a part of my life that felt a little bit like living the tower card of the tarot, where everything just sort of went sideways. And I was struggling with the onset of a chronic illness, which had an impact on my career, and my primary relationship blew up in a painful way. So that led me to taking a step back and kind of reassessing things. And I realized at that time that I was just extraordinarily disconnected from nature, that I was sitting in an office all the time, sometimes literally for days at a time without leaving. And I think that that sense of disconnection led to the imbalance in my life, or at least contributed to it. So I reconnected with my spiritual path. I reconnected with the earth and embarked on this amazing path of studying shamanism, studying herbalism, studying Reiki and other forms of energy healing. And the most amazing thing really was doing plant sits as part of herbalism school and realizing that I could really receive wisdom directly from the plants, that they have this incredible consciousness that's accessible to everybody, that we can all interact with, and that we can have incredible connections with them. And that opened up so much for me. It just really reignited my sense of wonder and of joy and of the desire to explore again. So here I am with Dancing Bee.
See, I absolutely love this because it is just fascinating, as I mentioned before, how one thing has naturally led to the next on your path. But when you talk about the plants and the plant energy and we're not just talking about the medicinal factors of herbalism. Each plant, each species has a really unique energy, a signature, so to speak. And I feel like I have a dear friend who is also an herbalist, and she has mentioned that you get to know them in the same way you would energetically get to know another person or an animal. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really the wonder of working with them on an energetic level. That I think we're fairly used to the fact that plants are nutritional for our bodies and they provide medicine for our physical bodies. Much of our medicine now, even if it's processed in labs, originally derived from plants or from constituent parts of plants. So we're used to working with plants on that physical level. And I think as a society, we're starting to also explore more deeply working with plants on an energetic level. There's a conversation, increasing conversation around psychotropic plants such as psilocybin and using that to as a therapeutic path to heal depression, to heal the sense of disconnection, to heal things such as addiction issues. But it's really amazing to discover that we can work with them on an energetic level without having that physical component, without ingesting the plants. And like you say, get to know them, get to know their energetic signature. And I look at it a lot of times as plants holding archetypal energy. So we
Mm-hmm.
know from physics that everything is energy. Physics tells us that there's no building block of matter, no essential building block of matter, that everything that we perceive as energy, or I'm sorry, everything that we perceive as matter is energy that's vibrating at a particular frequency. So we're all part of this same energy tapestry. And in my experience, that energy tapestry is also consciousness. Interestingly, some physicists and some neuroscientists are now exploring that idea as well through a theory called panpsychism. And I don't know if that will bear out in physics, but it's interesting that's being explored by some top scientists, because I always find it fascinating when spiritual paths and science paths converge in that way. But if we take the proposition that we're all part of the same energetic tapestry, that we're all part of this tapestry of consciousness, it makes sense that we would be able to interact with forms of consciousness beyond human consciousness. Of course, not all of that consciousness looks the same. We're very used to how human consciousness looks, how it's expressed through our beautiful cognitive brains, our nervous systems. And so it might feel a little foreign to explore a different form of consciousness, but it's really accessible to us. And the way I think of plant consciousness and getting back to it, holding archetypal energy, plants are part of the same energetic tapestry as we are, the same tapestry of consciousness that we inhabit, but they don't have the ego selves that we have. They're not as individuated as we are. So they don't need this sort of outer shell of ego, of personality that we carry with us, that protects us and that really helps to inform us and to keep us safe, keep our personalities vibrant as we walk through life. Plants don't have that. And so I think of them as holding archetypal energy, holding this ancient earth wisdom. They are our ancestors on earth. They've been around here for a very long time. And so you might meet a plant that, for example, holds a Mars signature. And if you work with that plant, then maybe it can help you realign the way that you stand with relation to the Mars archetype. If you're feeling a lot of conflict in your life or a lot of inflammation in your life, that plant holding a Mars signature, holding that Mars archetype can really be a great mirror and hold up a mirror to you and say, hey, how are you in relation to this archetype? Do you need to shift? Do you need a little boost? Are you holding some wounding in this area? And they can really become an ally in that way.
Could you go a little bit more into the Mars energy of how would that present as a plant archetype? How would that even, I just don't completely understand it. So,
Sure. So I tend to work with plants from an astroherbalism perspective, and I'm not an astrologer at all. I just find it to be a helpful framing and a doorway into a deeper and richer experience with the plant. Continuing on that Mars example, you can tell a lot from a plant and from the medicine that they hold simply by looking at them. So a plant that holds Mars energy might come across as a little prickly on the outside. I think of the Mars archetype as being the warrior. So I suppose we should start there. So think
mhm.
of it as the warrior energy, and it has physical correspondences as well in herbalism. It might correspond with our blood and other parts of our physical bodies. But I think of it on an energetic level as really representing our warrior selves. And ideally, when our Mars archetype, when we're in great alignment with our Mars archetype, then our warrior self is acting in service to our higher selves. Often in life, it can be a little bit of a bumpy road. And so our warrior self might get a little bit stuck here and there. We might get stuck on being in service to a fear, or being in service to a pain point or a wounding, where maybe we're lashing out, or we're having a lot of conflict, or we're hiding. And so we can use these amazing earth allies, this amazing plant wisdom, to have a mirror and to realign that. So when we engage in a plant, we can look and say, oh, okay, I see you have a little bit of that warrior energy. You look a little bit prickly. Maybe they have thorns, maybe they have the red energy, red color, having that energy of Mars. So we can start to get a sense of them and the energy they hold just by looking at them. And then when we're practiced in engaging with direct communication with them, which is really just a matter of building up the muscle. Everybody can do it. It's a practice that is held across the globe by strong traditions, and it's a practice that all of our ancestors at some point engaged in, but in our dominant Western culture, we've sort of lost that practice. But we can engage with that practice simply by reaching out, by learning to shift our brain waves into a little bit of a meditative state. And then the plant will often mirror to us where we're out of alignment. And how that might look is they might really direct your attention to say that there's a fear that's holding you back. Maybe you had a bad experience public speaking one time, or maybe you had something in your academic career where your advisor shut you down, or whatever it is, you're holding this fear that's keeping you from advancing in your career. When you engage in the meditation with that plant, they might just simply direct your attention to that and allow you to shift your perspective to it and realize that it's something that you don't have to be holding in that way anymore. So maybe you want to go work with a healer, work with a therapist to explore that origin of that pain point and move on. Or maybe the plan itself through the communications can help you do that. But it helps you to realign, to free yourself from things that are painful or that are holding you back, and to move forward in an easeful and graceful way.
That's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I know a large premise of your work is based on that connection with earth energy and the healing that is available to all of us. And so many people may say, oh, I don't know about the earth energy and the whole thing. But you just made a very, very important point that we all can go back to a hunter-gatherer society. And I've brought this up in other episodes because I really believe in core shamanism. I'm not aligning with any one indigenous culture or saying that I'm from that culture. I'm more saying these birthright that we all have as a human being on the planet to access this information that's been given to all of us. And that seems like a big, big foundation for your work.
It is, and that's such an important point. I love the way that you put that, because I think so many of us are disconnected from our ancestral traditions, from the earth wisdom traditions. And there are amazing, wise indigenous cultures around the globe who are still holding those traditions. But in the Western world, we've largely cut ourselves off from those traditions. And I think the one thing, if people do want to explore their own ancestral lineages and explore different specific lineages of healing and of shamanic traditions, that's a really beautiful thing. But those traditions are really well held. And I think that as we explore earth wisdom, one thing to keep in mind is that the earth is like you say, our birthright. It's available to all of us. And so we don't necessarily need to infringe on other indigenous traditions, or don't necessarily need to seek out our own ancestral paths unless we're called to do so. But the earth it's here. It's accessible for all of us in a really simple way. And just by learning to build up that muscle and learning to reconnect. And it really does have such a transformative effect. Like you say, people might think, well, I don't really know about this. And it does sound weird, right? It sounds a little weird to say I talk to plants. And I myself sometimes have a hard time when people say, what do you do? And, I find myself sort of mumbling something weird and changing the subject, because it's a little weird to say, well, I talk to plants. But it's incredible when you really receive that, when you form a connection and really receive that direct wisdom and think, oh my gosh, this actually works. It really does have a way of transforming your whole perception of the earth.
I really think, this is just my own opinion, and maybe I'm way out in left field with this, that a lot of the weather patterns, climate, all these natural things that are happening, the earth is saying, can you please help me? I can't keep at it at this pace. And when you start to connect with the animals and the elements and the earth energy and the wind and all of those things, and you become more of an integral part of it rather than just an observer, I think that can help.
I think you're so right. I think it helps so much. I really do think that the earth is calling out to us and saying that the way we're living isn't sustainable. And it feels to me like we've cut off a part of ourselves by living so separately from the earth, that we are all part of the same energy tapestry. We all come from the earth and are supported by the earth. But at the moment, with the dominant Western culture, we're living in a mode where we're really just imposing our lives on the earth, as opposed to building them in connection with the earth, building them in harmony with the earth. And it's a hard way to live. It's a hard way for us to live. It's a very disconnected way to live, and it's hard on the earth. And when you start to make those connections, to talk to animals around you, to talk to the plants around you, and to realize, oh my gosh, there's so much wisdom here that we've been missing out on. And there's such a healing in just having that sense of connection. It can really start to shift the way that we live. And I think if more and more people are doing it, it can have huge effects.
Right. And remembering, and I've said this in multiple shows, is remembering we are just another species on the planet. We are not the species on the planet. And they all have as much right to be here as we do, if not more so, because they're working interconnectedly. We're the ones that are kind of mucking it up a bit. Anyway, coming back to...
No, I agree with that. And if I can jump in for just a minute, I think we've been so accustomed to living in this hierarchical state where we think that we're the evolved consciousness on the planet. And so, we might think animals are sentient beings as well and have emotions and things, but we tend to put them beneath humans, and we put plants beneath animals typically. And it's really revolutionary to break that down and to receive wisdom directly from plants and animals, and to realize we're all on an even playing field. We're different forms of consciousness. Maybe we have different experiences and different forms of wisdom, but we're all here sharing the planet, and coming at it from that hierarchical point of view doesn't serve any of us.
And you have this on your website, and it says connecting with plant consciousness is as simple as broadening our perception and remembering how to hear the language of the earth. It's as simple as diving into our senses and embodying our intuition. And it really is that simple. But I think, and what I really, I love this is because you worked in two very, very traditional fields before you were led back to this work, or decided to step more fully into this work and this connection with the earth. I will double guess the shit out of myself. Like I'll get a hit, I'll get in something intuitive, I'll sense an animal giving me a message, and my logical mind, that ego, that brain mind will say, Denise, you're making this up, or that's crazy train. So how did you work with that? Because I'm sure it had to happen based on your background.
Absolutely. And I think that that's part of why I sometimes revert to a physics framework to help understand what I do, that I'm lucky to have the physics understanding as well as understanding from shamanic practices and from other energy practices. But it helps sometimes to have a physics understanding to ground myself and say, okay, I'm not crazy. But one thing I do is oftentimes after I connect with a plant, I'll just do a little bit of research about that plant and see what herbalists have said about it, see what myths or legends might exist about that plant. And it's really incredible. I found that process to be really validating and really affirming. And often it opens up the door for even more wisdom to come through and an even deeper connection to form. So it's usually the case that when I receive a communication from a plant and then I go to, say, trusty old Google, I'll find the same thing. So I had an example just the other day where I was reaching out to a Australian tea tree plant in my backyard, and I had an experience. Oftentimes when I receive a communication from plants, they can show up in a lot of different ways, but it often feels a little bit like going on a journey or like being on a guided meditation. So I connected with this plant, and I had the experience of having just really seeing the strong image of a third eye opening in front of me, a bright, beautiful third eye. And then I had this image of these gold pillars of protective light going up around me on all sides, and then having that third eye shining through. So I went and I looked up Australian tea tree, and I found out that in Australian Aboriginal cultures, they have long seen that plant as a plant or a tree that can clear psychic blockages and that can protect you so that you can see clearly, and that can help you help guide you in and out of the dream time. And so knowing that was really affirming to say, yeah, I received that experience. I had this experience of clear seeing in the dream time, of that third eye opening and of having that open really safely. And then having that affirmed is wonderful. And it also just opens up, I think, my curiosity to keep exploring that connection and to go back to that tree or plant when I'm perhaps talking to an animal in an animal communication session, or when I'm doing visioning in myself, of knowing, oh yeah, now that plant is now an ally that I can call in to help me in those sessions. So it's incredible. It's an incredible sense of connection to find out, oh yeah, other herbalists said the same thing, or an Aboriginal culture said the same thing. It's that sense of connection that's really incredible.
And beautiful validation for you trusting your intuition to learn to trust the
Exactly.
plants more. And how different is that than someone holding a specific crystal to increase their clarity? It's just another connection with the earth to find what works best for you.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful story. So, do you sense a difference with how you communicate with animals versus plants? Is it vibrational difference? Does it work the same?
It's very similar. In both cases, there's a point where I'll know that I'm in their was going to say in their energy field. And sometimes with plants, I think that's very true. That'll be in their energy field. I think with animals, it's not so much that I'm in their energy field as connected to their energy field. There's a point with both of them where it shifts in that way. The difference is something that I think I just touched on there, is that animals do have an ego self like we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so there can be a little bit of a difference in the sense that it's more like our conversation here. When I'm connected with an animal, it's more like having a conversation or having them show me things. And with a plant, they can really bring me into their energy field and show me glimpses of their world and their reality and take me on little journeys. So that might be a little bit of a difference. But talking to animals, just like talking to plants, it really ignites your wonder, your curiosity. And it's so amazing to know how wise they really are, that we know that they're such a valued part of our life, but to have a deeper understanding of their soul path, of how they see us, of why they came to us, of how their experience with us helped their own evolution in addition to helping our evolution. It's amazing.
I really appreciate you describing that connection with animals that way, because that's that when I connect with an animal, it's very similar to connecting with a person's energy. And a lot of people will say, oh, will only communicate with visual or with pictures. And it hasn't worked that way for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's worked for me more that they're an individual sentient being, and I connect with them similar to doing a blend or like a light trance kind of work in mediumship. It's more of a blending with the animals. I think you're so spot on with the fact that they have so much wisdom and they will show up when we need them. So if you're like, that I love to go wander around in the woods and be outside and do all those things. And when I am blessed to meet an animal outside, or to see one on my path, or to look up and see an owl, I get a sacredness feeling that they're there to help me, or that they're there to help me find something in myself to work through a situation that may be going on in my life. So do you find them as messengers as well?
I really do. And that's another example of how we're all so much more connected than we know. When you speak of owls, I've had incredible experiences of speaking with animals who are a little bit non-traditional. I've been able to speak with birds that people have in their houses, or chickens that people have in their backyards. And it is an amazing experience to have that understanding. And like you say, I think they come when we need them. I had a dog recently who passed away, and their family wanted me to check in on them. And the dog gave me an image of a desk, a small desk that a child might sit at, and was telling me about calming energy and about offering peace and calm. And if that dog had been a person, he would probably would have been the kind of person to just gently put a hand on a knee when somebody was upset and be able to calm them down. He had that really calming, really peaceful energy. But he kept showing me that image of sitting by a child's desk. And so I explored that a little bit with the family. And they said that when they got him, the daughter in the family was really struggling in school. She was having a lot of frustrations, and they were going through the process of trying to get more information about where her struggles came from, doing some testing and things, but they were a little bit in the dark at the time. And so every time she sat down to do her homework, this frustration would arise and tears would happen. And so it was right around that time that dog came into their life, and the dog would just go and sit by her when she had to sit down and do her homework. And she always found it to be so calming and so helpful. And until they were able to get more information and formulate a better educational plan, that dog was really there, just anchoring her and just putting that paw on her knee and telling her, it's going to be okay. I gotcha. And then, eventually she was able to have a more successful path in school, and ultimately the dog passed away. But he clearly came to her and came to the family at a time when they needed that calming influence, and when they needed somebody to sort of unravel all the sense of frustration and tears and just say, hey, it's okay. And I think that happens almost all the time with the animals in our lives, that they really have such gifts to offer us, whether it's a owl that we cross on our path, or whether it's a dog or a cat or a bird or a rabbit who comes to stay
Right.
with us for a while.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm a huge, huge believer in the healing power of animals, and that sometimes they'll take on some of the things that we're working through to try to make it easier for us. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. And when you speak of this, you can feel your passion. You can feel that this is deeply service work for you, making this connection and sharing that ability to bring through messages, to bring through healing, to share the nuances of the plants not only as medicine but as allies. It's really beautiful. So what do you have? How can people get in touch with you, and what do you offer? And I'm sure people would love to know more about you and your offerings, Heather.
Oh, thank you. It is work that I'm deeply passionate about, and it's work that I'm really honored to do. Every time I get to talk to an animal or have a healing session or open somebody up to plant wisdom, it really just feels like a deep honoring. So people can find me at my website, which is dancingbeealchemy.com. I work with bees as one of my allies, and I have a beehive in my backyard. And bees dance with each other frequently to communicate where food is, or to communicate where home is. And I love working with the natural world to alchemize our lives and to alchemize our sense of the world and our understanding of the world. So that's where Dancing Bee Alchemy comes from. So you can find me at my website, dancingbeealchemy.com. I offer animal communication sessions. I teach plant communication sessions. I'll have some classes coming up this fall and winter, both online and hopefully in person, weather and COVID permitting. And I offer healing sessions that employ shamanic healing techniques and energy healing techniques.
And you also do intuitive development and have a course on entering the dream time as well. Yes?
That's right. I'll have some new dates coming up for that soon. So my plant communication classes are obviously specifically aimed at plants, but when we increase our intuition and learn how to more easily step out of the very linear, very cognitive mindset that we're usually in, then we can use those skills to talk to our guides, to communicate with plants, to communicate with our animals. I kind of look at it as getting an advanced degree in being human. It feels like a really valuable life skill to have that can take you in a number of different directions and just really enrich your life. So I'll have new course dates coming up soon for that.
And that's a huge, huge point in that it is all interconnected. I've been training in mediumship for many, many decades now. I've done intuitive development. I've lived my life, with this being a huge part of who I am, not what I do. But and I've done shamanic practices, training, and all these things, that how the longer you're in this world, how interrelated it all is. You can use all of it to strengthen those other aspects and modalities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only to be of service to each other and the planet, it's on that self-development and self-growth that I think is part of our soul evolution.
I think so too. And it can be so valuable regardless of what your path is in life, just increasing your intuition and having a greater understanding of the universe and our place in it. So whether you're in the corporate world or whether you're an herbalist or a healer or somewhere in between, it's just a wonderful thing to do to enrich your life and learn more about yourself and about the universe.
Oh, so beautifully said. It's incredible. This is a gentle way to reconnect. And you may be drawn more to the plants or the animals or the elements or a specific species or a specific plant, and that's okay. But I think realizing that we all have this capability, this isn't a specialized skill set that only a few people get. We all have this, I think, an internal compass that brings us back home to this.
I think so too. I think that's really beautifully said. And when we honor that compass and follow that compass, it's just really incredible what gifts that can come of that and what beautiful unfolding in our life can come from that.
And it's fun as hell.
It is. It is. Sometimes I still feel silly sitting out there like, yep, I am standing here talking to a tree. That's what I'm doing. But it's so much fun, and it always just opens up such a sense of wonder. It is a lot of fun.
That's huge, because part of where things seem to be going next is finding that community of like-minded people to be able to have these kind of conversations, so that it's when people know your vocabulary and understand that you can go into a garden and pat a little flower on the head and say thank you, that you do get a response. And that's not everybody's crazy. For some people, that's just as normal as anything else.
Absolutely. I've met amazing people who do that naturally and have their whole lives and would look at me and shrug and say, well, why is that weird? And other people who would say, you do what now? That seems a little out there. But it is something that once you learn it, you can incorporate it into your daily life. And if you're standing at the bus stop and you look over and there's a dandelion, you might be like, hi, are you giving me a little ray of sunshine, a little bit of courage to take into my meeting today? It's something that you can really weave into your daily life in a beautiful way.
Oh, I love that. So Dancing Bee Alchemy.com. Are there any social media outlets or?
Oh, I very sporadically post on Instagram. I have
Okay.
an Instagram page that's linked on my website, and trying to get a little bit better about social media. But for now, it's fairly limited. Oh, I do have a Facebook page that I recently set up. I sometimes have a little bit of struggles with social media and all the noise and things that can be associated with it. But I am slowly working on building up my social media presence. But for now, the primary way is through my website. And people can also sign up for my newsletter on my website and be informed of classes that are upcoming and of new dates as they become available.
And for people in the San Francisco Bay Area, she has an upcoming in-person class in Berkeley on November 5th. You can find dates for online classes on her website. This is an ongoing process. And sometimes when you find a teacher, a mentor, a group of people that you want to work with, it's always good to know what's coming up next so that you can connect with them. Heather, thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom and your light and your connection to spirit and earth, because so very, very inspirational. And please know how much you're appreciated and valued. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
So very much.
Delightful to talk to you. Thank you.
Yes. So anyone that's listening, that's trying to wonder what their gift might be, it doesn't really matter. Just find something that calls your heart and follow that. And I promise it'll make a difference. Take care.